essentially what happened was the Greeks were leaving their little peninsula and spreading out, and some of them spread into what is today Turkey or Asia Minor. And as they did so, right here, this is as good a map as any as I'll get for this. All right, they spread out into this place, and this area was conquered by the Persian king. Well, the Greeks living in here were continually rebelling against the Persians, and finally the Persian king, King Darius, just got tired of it. So he sent his army to conquer Greece and add Greece to his domains. And to make a long story short, he failed to conquer Greece. The Greeks united. There have been many a book written about the wars and why the Greeks were able to win, even though the Persians outnumbered them. One reason, the Greeks were far, far better trained, and the Greeks had better equipment. The Greeks also were fighting with more patriotism. Your Persian was mainly fighting to save his skin. The Greeks were actually fighting to win. Anyway, there was a movie made about the battle of Thermopylae. Now, one thing I remember about the Battle of Thermopylae. At the Battle of Thermopylae, 300 Spartans stood shoulder to shoulder. Now, the Thermopylae was a pass. And if you see it from the side, it would look like this. Here's where you could stand, and here were two hills on the side. So the Spartan army under King Leonidas, don't worry about the name, but stood shoulder to shoulder right here, blocking the Persians. The Persians numbered into the tens of thousands, but for the Spartans, 300 men might have held them off. But a traitor, someone who was really a Greek but who knew a way around the pass, showed the Persian army a way around the pass, and they got behind the Spartan army. And of course, one of the weaknesses of hoplite fighting, if you get behind the army, you could probably win. So they got behind the Spartans and killed the Spartans. But the Spartans fought to the last man, and they were all killed, King Leonidas included. Anyway, someone said, we'll shoot arrows so thick you can't see the sun. And a Spartan soldier replied, well, we'll fight you in the shade of the arrows. So we're not afraid of your arrows. But anyway, Thermopylae was a defeat for the Greeks. But the decisive battle of the First War was the Battle of Marathon. Now, at the Battle of Marathon, the Greeks defeated the Persians. The plain of Marathon was 26 miles from Athens. Now, there was a Greek runner named Thucydides. He had won an olive leaf at the Olympics, and he'd already ran 150 miles to go to the various Greek city-states to tell them where the Persians were. And you might think they could have let him rest the battle, but no, nobody rested. He had to fight the battle. And after fighting the battle to him, you run to Athens and give your people in Athens the news that you've won. He got to the Athens square, and he was able to get out the words, victory is ours. And he fell over dead. Give you some idea of the courage, the bravery, and the fortitude of these people. To remember the event, to this day, we hold a race called the Marathon. And the Marathon is 26 miles long.
Isn't that what, like Nike, I guess, stands for?
Nike Marathon, yeah, we advertise it. Nike shoes, the Marathon, several. We commemorate. Hey, there's a lot of what these people did that still touches our lives today. But we have often wondered, could the Greek runners have run the 4-minute mile? Speculation by moderns is probably not. my own personal view is some of their runners might could have beaten every one of ours. That they may have had better bodies before our bodies became corrupted by a DNA mutation here. A few generations there, another mutation. A few generations down, another mutation. Until we are a little bit weaker, perhaps, than they were. Again, that's sheer speculation. We don't really have any way of knowing. Anyway, like I said, the Greeks were outnumbered, but one of the generals insisted on going, and they charged across the plain. And while charging across the plain, the Greeks were in such good shape physically from their workout in the gymnasiums that they weren't even tired. Then they clashed with the Persians. Again, they clashed, every one of them standing shoulder to shoulder. The Persians had never seen such discipline, and the Persians were routed. Well, Darius went home in defeat, and his son came back later, Xerxes. Xerxes came back to fight the Greeks again, and he engaged them, first of all, at the Battle of Salamis, which was a sea battle. Now, the Greeks were better seamen than were the Persians. I mean, the land of Persia, it does touch the coast, but nothing like the Greeks. I mean, the Greeks were excellent fighters on the sea. And the Greeks defeated the Persians at Salamis. Now, there's a story that a Greek philosopher got a concave mirror. Now, probably most of you as kids played with magnifying glasses and would shine a magnifying glass on the sun and burn a little spot on your hand with it, or burn a piece of paper, burn a leaf. Yes,
Archimedes' death ray thing, we burned the Persian ship.
what's that?
The Archimedes' death ray thing, we say burned the Persian ship.
Well, okay, you jumped ahead in the story. Supposedly, now here's this story takes a little twist. He shined a concave mirror on the Persian ships and caught the Persian ships on fire and burned the Persian ships in the harbor. And it do now. Today, some of our experts have tried this same feat using a concave mirror, and we've tried it with several mirrors and tried it with several different kinds of wooden ships, even sails ships, and we can't do it. This experiment tried. Now, according to the ancient folklore, now they did it. Now, why could they supposedly do it and we can't? Folk, I don't know. Maybe the sails would be easier to catch on fire than the wooden. But according to what they said, he focused the mirror on the wooden vessels and caught the wood on fire, and was able to catch a bunch of Persian ships on fire that way. Again, your book leaves that out. I thought I'd throw it in, but supposedly it can't be done. Anyway, Xerxes went on in from Salamis and went on to Greece. And here he was defeated. I'll tell you, folk, I did get the story mixed up a little bit. The Battle of Thermopylae Pass actually occurred under Xerxes and not Darius. I wondered why I couldn't see it. I got it a little bit mixed up. My apologies. But anyway, Thermopylae it occurred under the reign of Xerxes. Xerxes was able to win the initial battle. He lost at Salamis. Again, for the second generation in a row, a Persian king went home in defeat, and Greece was never again invaded by the Persians. But later, Greece was to go in and conquer. Well, actually, Macedonia up here in the northwest part of Greece, they were to go in and conquer the Persians. But that's jumping ahead of the story a little bit. All right, so we got the Persian threat is now out of the way. So we move on to the high point of the Athenian Empire, the golden age of Pericles. Historians call this classical Greece, or the Greece at its very height. It was under Pericles that the Parthenon was built, the magnificent structures. In fact, Athens was able to beautify itself. And here's how. A league was formed to keep out the Persian advance. And if Persia invades again, we must unite. We must all get together. So the Athens formed the Delian League, and with Athens itself to head. Headed up by Athens. Now, all these member nations or member city-states had to pay tribute to Athens in promise for protection. And since there was no threat that ever came from Persia again, Athens was able to use that money and beautify itself. So they built a really magnificent city out of this, and the result was Athens became one of the wonders of the world. In the meantime, certain other Greek city-states did not agree with this, and they formed another league called the Peloponnesian League. And it was headed up by Sparta. Now, if you haven't guessed already, there's going to eventually become a war between Athens and Sparta. And then your book goes on to how the government of Athens was run. And hey, I took a whole course on this when I was in graduate school about how they would simply like throw a bunch of chips in the lottery and pull out the chips. And if your chip was pulled, you were Archon for a year. And people of all classes, in other words, it had nothing to do with whether you were rich or not. You could be anywhere from very rich to the very poor were chosen. But you were made Archon strictly by lot. They had another practice that we might consider unusual called ostracizing. And in other words, they cast a vote called ostreka, and the person who got the most ostreka was ostracized. Now the word ostracize, again, sounds like a bad word, but the only people that Athens ever ostracized, the ones who finished second in the election. Now here's why. If you know anything about small town or small city or even church politics, generally, the people form into two camps that are very, very nearly equal. Then, of course, there would be a small camp, an insignificant camp of people who get 1 or 2% of the vote. But like a typical election, the winner gets 51%, the loser gets 48%, then another camp might get somewhere at the bottom. Well, today, if the winner got 51% today, that means tomorrow he could get down to 49%. So what they do, they tell the person who finished second, but a really high second, that he was to leave the city for 10 years. Basically, he was what he called ostracized. He would leave the city for 10 years. Otherwise, the winner would just simply not have any power to act because the politics could shift so fast. So the loser of the election would leave town for 10 years, while the winner would then be free to function as a government. Now, it may sound strange to us, but then again, in most of our elections, the winner of a presidential election only wins by about 55, 56% of the popular vote. Sometimes more than that, but again, we give our losers no power whatever. But in those days, in a small city where everybody practically knew everybody, the loser could just come in any time if he wanted to and say, hey, I'm really the rightful heir. I mean, I'm really the rightful leader because I just got 51% of the votes in a straw poll I conducted today. So they would send the loser off to be ostracized.